Hey everyone, it's Failed Shot back in their video, and today we're going to be going over the March 30th patch notes here, and there are some really impressive changes here and some things that are a little bit controversial, but I think a lot of people don't have the entire idea here. So we're going to go over all of it and definitely talk about one specific change, specifically here at the end of the video a lot more, because it is very, very impactful for the rest of the game. So let's go ahead and jump right into it with number one here at Hero Recall. So we don't know the details about this, but this is a feature that allows you to refund basically any materials that you've used to basically on a character, ability crystals, XP jelly, glyphs, assuming all these types of things. I'm not sure about ascensions and how that's going to work. I don't know how any of this is going to work, but it looks like any character that is in a balance change that receives a significant change, either rework or nerf, they're going to give you your resources back if you choose to do so. This is a massive, massive change, and honestly, I never thought it would come to the game, but I think that because this is in the game now, I think that they are, in my opinion, able to change freely without any repercussion in general. Now, that I want to caveat that by saying, obviously, there are healthy and unhealthy changes to the game. If you over-nerf a unit or over-buff a unit, it probably shouldn't be done in the first place. But that being said, even if they make a nerf to a character, it doesn't matter because you can just refund your resources and invest in a different character. So it literally does not matter whether or not, it was changed at all, in my opinion. So this is a really nice feature for a lot of players and really excited to see it in the game. The second thing I'm really, really excited for is this event. It adjusted the tiering up system. For a lot of you, you're still stuck on those lower tiered events. And that's because they didn't actually basically track your progress from all the previous events. It only recently started about a month ago, and it only tracks the same event of that type. So if you did a promotion event, you'd have to do 3 or 4 promotion events to get to the max tier. Now it counts all events. So by the time you've done 3 or 4 events, you'd have the max tier of all your events. Huge change, and it should fix all events for everyone, unless it reset the retroactive progress type thing. Maybe after a couple events, everyone should have the same max tier. Really like this change and really happy to see it. Number 3, adjusted the damage coefficient of the following heroes when they act as AI enemies, which is nice. They might have been doing a little too much. I've not seen them as AI enemies, so, I guess we'll see. Added the skill description for the elite enemies in Roaring Tulpa. Very nice to see that. Just extra information. And then we get to the hero balance changes, and this is where it gets a little controversial, specifically one change, and I'll skip over it and come back to it at the end. This is a big, big change. First one up is Asrina. Her trait's now going to counterattack on an AoE. Cool, doesn't really change too much, but it is nice to see an AoE counterattack. Really, the only place you're going to be using Asrina is in Tulpa, and the AoE counterattack doesn't really change much in that case. The basic Fireball, chance to apply Ignite increases from 50 to 100%, and the ultimate chance to duplicate Ignite increases from 50 to 100%. This is nice, it's much more consistent. I like to see that. The only problem is Ignite isn't very good, so this doesn't really change too much about Asrina in my opinion. I think she's going to be equally as poor as she was before. I think that, she's still going to be used in Tulpa and still can be used in Tulpa, but I think there's better options, and I don't think she really breaks into any new content with this change. Number 2, Urzak here. This one is a big one. We have, first off, the trait. This is a rework, by the way. When attacking, apply additional damage based on the difference of attack between the character and the target. And when you're ascended, he gains 1 stack of block when he attacks. So this is pretty big. Before, it was when you got lower, you got more attack. This time, it's the difference between attack between that character and the target. I don't know if he has, let's say, less attack than a target, he'll do no bonus damage, or if it's just a lower percentage. I'm not sure how that'll work. But this trait is oftentimes going to be way better than his previous trait, because his previous trait was almost useless unless you paired him with someone like Yolanda. Then we have his basic. Previously, this would apply defense down, but now it applies unhealable for 2 turns. It does 120% damage. His special here does 120% damage and applies increased damage taken for 2 turns. And his ultimate here deals 200% damage and applies no positive effects for 2 turns. So this is the big changes. It's basically changed the entire way his kit worked. He's now a offense-based debuffer, and he screams Queen Dungeon for me. Unhealable, no positive effects, even increased damage taken is all things that are really, really useful. And specifically for Queen 14, he really, really has to have that AoE for you to kind of run that Zaox comp without absurd stats. And now that unhealable and no positive effects might come in handy very, very nicely for the Queen Dungeon. It really just screams Queen for me. Not sure if he's good enough, but I definitely want to try him, and I think he has a lot of potential there. I'm going to skip over Hakrin because I'm going to come back to it later because this is the most controversial change. Number 4, Edicris here. Another rework. Trait, the Refractory Prism. When attacking, there's a 35% chance to launch a bonus attack. And when successfully removing a positive effect, there's a 35% chance to launch a bonus attack. So there's already a 35% chance to launch a bonus attack. And then when you remove a positive effect, you get an additional 35% chance. And these bonus attacks deal 60% damage and remove one positive effect. Can be triggered twice per round. If you have the Ascended, he's going to get ability immunity to start a battle. I assume it's permanent, so you have to hit it to get it removed, kind of like CC. And then his basic is just going to deal 100% damage to an enemy and remove one positive effect. His special is going to grant the character attack up and precision up 2 for 2 turns and a bonus turn at the end of the round when successfully removing a positive effect. Increase the duration of those buffs by 1 turn, which is really nice. This is pretty nice for Edicris in general. It's probably worse than his previous special, but overall okay. And then his ultimate's just going to deal 120% damage and remove 1 positive effect. And it's going to grant himself resistance up for 1 turn, resistance up 2. So really when I look at Edicris here, I look at him as a Dispel bot. That's really all he is. He's just going to be removing positive effects all the time. I think he's actually a little worse than he was previously for PvP in some of the scenarios he was using in, because he's actually really tanky. So really all he's used for is dispelling positive effects. So where you need that, he might come in handy. I think he's going to be worse in Queen than he was before. But overall, again, just a positive effect remover, maybe good enough for Arena, specifically for the change to Hakrin, and I'll go over that in just a moment. Hugh, basic, Joint Fury, increases the damage scale based on the character's speed. So the character's speed is going to increase the damage. Very nice. And then we have Marion Shadowblood, Lash, basic, increase the damage from 50 to 80%. This is a placebo buff. When you're building Marion Shadowblood, you're going to be building high speed, high HP and defense to keep her alive in the dungeons. If you're building her with attack, crit damage, things like that, 30% damage is actually quite a bit because you're going to be joint attacking all the time. But if you're not, and you're building her as a standard, kind of poisoner type unit, it doesn't do anything. It literally gives you an additional maybe 200 damage per joint attack. It's an additional 1,000 damage per full round that you're going, which is literally like 1/10 of a poison tick for the bosses on stage 14. So really no big change there. I'm going to jump back to Hakrin here because this is a big one and it's very controversial for some people. First off, the trait. His trait is only going to give bonuses to the rest of the team, not Hakrin. So this is going to make it so Hakrin isn't going to be quite as tanky as he was before, but this shouldn't matter too much because he was already so tanky and he really just honestly never died in dungeon runs. He was always the last to die, in my opinion. I've never seen him, or at least my experience, I've never seen him die before the other characters. Even in Queen, where you want him to be targeted, it really just, he was too tanky because you stacked so much defense on him and he was getting the max HP up from his buffs, and he still can all do that. So I really don't see him dying because of this, and I don't think it really changes too much. If it makes it so his defense that he gave to himself was also shared with the rest of the team, it also doesn't matter too much because it's maybe like 50-60 defense, assuming you have about 300 or 3,500 defense on him. So it doesn't really change the rest of your team. This is really just a pure Hakrin change here. And then the ultimate here, change max HP up to buff and can be dispelled. This increase and decrease of max HP will be changed based on the target's current HP. So this is massive. It's huge for so many reasons. First off, I'm going to go over the PvP implications because I think they're pretty much all positive. And then I'm going to go over the PvE implications. First off, for PvP, the tank comp is going to be significantly worse because of these changes. For one, Hakrin is not going to be nearly as tanky from the defense bonus to himself. And that's huge for taking out Hakrin, especially with someone like a Nathalia who doesn't have positive elemental advantage. And she doesn't do as much damage to Hakrin. But not only that, the max HP buff can be dispelled. So it works with, some characters that can dispel. Evra is a very common one. So Evra can now dispel some of the stacks of max HP. But that's honestly not even a big portion of why I think this is a huge deal. The huge deal is this last portion for PvP, in my opinion, as well as the trait. The increase and decrease of max HP will be changed based on the target's current HP. For me, this is a huge change. And I imagine for a lot of you, when I'm running against these comps, I oftentimes will kill off 1 or 2 units and then Methasia will revive them. But the problem is they're going to come back and Hakrin's going to go ahead and use that max HP stack. And he's just going to give everyone a 15% HP, max HP increase. but this is going to be based upon their current HP. So let's assume you will kill 1 or 2 units. If Deja revives, then they come back with about 35% HP. Now, instead of giving, the full, let's just assume 20k HP to those characters, they're only going to get a max HP increase based on, maybe 5 to 6k HP rather than the 20k HP. So it's not going to be, a 4k, 5k max HP increase. It's going to be maybe about 1,000 or so, which is huge. It's going to be a huge change because that also healed them for that amount of HP when Hakrin did that. So it made it really, really tough to go on round 2 and finish off everyone. So this is a big change for PvP in general. And obviously it's going to change the tank comps to be less viable than they were before. So I think this is overall a positive change for PvP. Now let's go ahead and get into the PvE implications because a lot of people are worried about it. And honestly, it's like a whole dumpster fire in the official Ace Discord right now. And very, very surprised to see it because I don't think a lot of people are thinking through this one. First off, we have to talk about the max HP being dispellable. So really this affects 2 areas of the game, from my opinion. Maybe Witch as well, because she applies the no positive effects. And I think she can dispel, but I'm not 100% sure about Witch. What I do know is that Gemini can be dispel the buffs, and in Queen, she can dispel the buffs. For Queen, this really does not change any early game too much. The reason why I say that is because when you're building an early game comp, as a free-to-play player, even if it's not a free-to-play player, I've done it several times, and I've done it for several accounts. 90% of the time, why you fail is because you have not managed the waves properly. It is huge to get past the first 2 waves, and as far as we know, these buffs are going to be transferable between stages because they are permanent buffs that last through the rounds. They're not like turn limit based, as you can see here. And so if it is, consistent throughout the rounds, this doesn't change pretty much anything. The boss really doesn't become a real big problem in the early game. It's really the waves that keep you from completing Queen 12 consistently. Now, that's not to say the boss isn't completely, a cakewalk. It does matter that the buff can be dispelled, but if you know what the Queen does, the only way she can dispel is from her getting herself 3 positive effects and launching a bonus attack that hits a couple people and dispels 1 buff. Remember, he stacks up to 3 times, so can only dispel 1, as far as I know from the way the Queen works. And this means that it doesn't really change the fact that you're going to be increasing the max HP over and over again, because it only dispels with 1 stack. Now, you can talk about the increase and decrease of max HP based on the target's current HP. This does affect the strength of that buff that he's applying, but honestly, in the waves, generally, you're going to get that stack. This may mean that you need to have a little bit of speed on Hakrin to make sure he's going before the waves, or maybe your healer needs to make sure she's healing enough, Radira, Methasia, things like that. But overall, I don't think this changes all too much in the grand scheme of things. And I believe the way the max HP buff will work is that if you get a higher stack of max HP than previous, it will replace that one. But again, this is obviously we have not practiced with it because the servers are down right now. And then, of course, the team-wide defense bonus doesn't really affect anything because Hakrin is never the first one to die. Usually it's going to be someone else. And if it's someone else, then the team's going to fall apart anyways, and Hakrin is just going to die eventually anyways. So that really is the big change there. And Gemini is the other one, and Gengelo is the only way you beat Gemini, and it doesn't really change anything because you weren't stacking 3 stacks of max HP in Gemini anyways when you were using Gengelo from any of the comps I built. So it doesn't really change anything there, for my opinion. I don't think it really does anything in PvE in regards to nerfing it. Yes, it will be a little bit worse, and yes, you have to make sure that you kind of tune your team right to make sure you're timing those max HP stacks when you have the maximum HP. But what I think is really crazy, and things that people are not talking about at all, is the fact that this is a buff. What that means is that you can use him with Nathalia, and Nathalia gets a buff. You no longer need to run a buffer or a guard set with Nathalia. This unlocks so many comps. One of the reasons why I have to use Joseph and Ash is not because of his cleanse. I'd much rather run someone else with a cleanse, like Blackhorn, for example. But I need the buffs from Joseph. Now I can speed tune it to where Hakrin is going before Nathalia, giving herself a buff, and now Nathalia has the buff. Just take the comp I built earlier today. I no longer have to run Joseph. I can run Blackhorn, and now I probably have a 100% consistent team because now I have a cleanser with a heal, and I can just run Nathalia and make sure she's clearing out everyone. It's going to be much easier to build comps, as well as running Queen 14, for example. You can run the same comp that we were running earlier in the week that I made a video on with Zatlux, but instead of running Zatlux, you can run Nathalia. You can run Nathalia, let's just say Urzag, Hakrin, and Santis. And now Hakrin will buff Nathalia and she can clear out the wave rather than having a third character or a second character to buff her or to have a guard set on her. So it completely eliminates the use of guard set from certain PvE scenarios or the need for it, which is very, very impressive. And it really does change the landscape of the interaction between Nathalia and Hakrin. Now, a lot of you out there will be saying, oh, well, I don't have Nathalia or you don't get her for free. I do recommend that everyone do get her from rookie summons. That's what I said recently, and I've been saying. I think that the best combination of rookie summons is going to be Nathalia plus Windstrex or Nathalia plus William. And I think that it's actually you should probably take her just solo over any of the other damage dealers because she's so crucial for Ashe in some areas of the game. So I think that this change is actually massive and honestly leans towards the more positive side for those of you that actually have Nathalia. Now, if you don't have Nathalia, it is just a straight up nerf, in my opinion. And that's just not really arguable. Unless, of course, you take Arena into account, then it might be a buff because you can beat some Arena comps. I guess that's in some way above. But in general, I'm very happy for this change. I think Hakrin is a little too strong. Obviously, this changes PvP as well as PvE, and I think it makes it more balanced. And I don't think it will change PvE content all that much. Except for the Nathalia change, which I think is massive, actually, and it changes more of the PvE content than it would with the nerf itself. So that's going to be my overall thoughts on the patch. Again, I think the Edicris rework is just a Dispel bot, not very impressive. Q, it can be very good, depending on how much damage this actually does. Marion's a placebo. Hakrin is overall I think a well-thought-out balance change, and, a buff for my account, I think. Urzag is positive for Queen. Serena is just nothing. And then Hero Recall. If you don't like the changes for Hakrin, Hero Recall him. Get your resources back, use them on someone else, or, which I think a lot of people will do, go back and use them on Hakrin again because you find out that Hakrin is so good still. I think that the Hero Recall feature is super awesome and very excited to see this change. And again, I'm very hopeful for the Hakrin changes. I like what they did here, and I think that it is very fair. And I think that it's very helpful for a lot of Nathalia users. So that'll be it for this video. Hopefully you all enjoyed, and I know it was a little bit longer reviewing the patch notes, but I just wanted to talk about a little bit of the things that I thought about the Hakrin changes because he's such a widely used character and so popular. Let me know what you all think in the comments down below. Let me know if you are very upset or not. Again, I think that Hakrin isn't as bad as a lot of people think that he is. So that'll be it for this one, and I'll see you for the next one.